right. Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Mind Matters. My name is Jeff Hirvela. I am minus my co-host, Mike Quartararo, today. The poor guy has some debilitating back pain, so he wasn't able to get much sleep last night. I think in some ways that may be fitting for our show. I think a lot of us have physical manifestations of the stress we carry in everyday life. Also real problems. I'm not saying that his is derived from stress or the topic of today, burnout. But I know that for me personally, I sometimes notice when I am stressed or feeling burnt out that I start to get achy. I start to get agitated, and it's something that I work on a regular basis for how stress presents itself in my life. So today, our guest is Michelle Six. She comes to us from the law firm Gunster, but more importantly for the conversation today, she is part of a group called the Mind Budget Connection. They've done a lot of work addressing burnout in the e-discovery space. We wanted to have her as an early guest because, like Mind Matters, they're focused on helping our friends, our colleagues in this space. The goal is to address specifically in e-discovery the issues of burnout and how we can maybe affect some change in that. And I'll just a quick connection to some of my personal work with my group called MCG. They're a group that I've aligned with as well. And the MCG stands for Model, Challenge, and Grow. We address addiction awareness in the workplace, but a lot of what we're doing, I think we'll get into today with Michelle, is modeling different ways, talking about different ways we can show up as part of building solutions. We don't have the answers, but we want to have the conversations. Same with Mind Matters. We don't have the answers here, but we want to talk to people who do have some ideas and keep the conversations going. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and open it up and let's bring in Michelle. Awesome.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Well, hello, Michelle. Thank you for being a guest on our show. And as I was mentioning, I think it's just a timely, conversation. I'll lead with a little bit of just experience. When I heard about Mind Budget, specifically addressing burnout, I raised my hand. I'm like, yeah, I get that. Burnout for sure. How do I deal with it? I do crazy ultra marathons to keep my self physically engaged, and that's a good outlet. Once you do an ultra marathon, getting on a call, a client kickoff call, or if a project's going sideways, it's all put in perspective. Like if you can do something hard physically, sometimes that helps manage our daily jobs. And also, for me, my journey with sobriety, I used burnout and the hard work ethic as kind of a crutch and excuse for some of my behavior. And through addressing that, in sobriety myself, I found myself able to stay more engaged, not to check out or numb out with substances, rather really check in with myself and see how I'm feeling, how I'm dealing with things. So that was my understanding of burnout. But I think what you guys are doing with Mind Budget is looking at the root causes and a really fascinating approach. So just wanted to open it up. Michelle, tell us a little bit about your involvement, how you got started with Mind Budget.
Sure. So Mind Budget was the brainchild of my partner here at Gunster, Christine Payne. She and I worked together for many years at Kirkland & Ellis. And along with Amy Sellers, Jill Warham, Kevin Brady, and Stacy Sampak, they sort of combined forces to start the conversation about burnout, specifically in the e-discovery community across all of us, not just attorneys, right? We have a community of players in so many different spaces. And what would that conversation look like? Why would we want to start that conversation? What would we hope to achieve by having the conversation? And so one of the goals initially was to survey the community at large about burnout, about their experiences, what they were going through, what people were feeling, what burnout might look like or feel like for them, and then use that data, mine that data to draft a white paper that could be shared with everybody about the findings. And I will tell you that I was a bad initial participant in this project. Because I got the email to take the survey and then got the follow-up email and the follow-up email. And finally, Christine called me and she's like, why aren't you taking my survey? And I said, I simply don't have the time. And she said, you don't have the time to take a survey about burnout? And I said, maybe not. And so she read me the questions over the phone and I answered these questions. And then she said, you have failed this test. But in a loving way, she said, you are actually sort of scoring very high on the burnout spectrum, my friend, and I am worried about you. And that was sort of really my initial prompt to come be a part of the team. But what struck me was that we may be feeling a lot of symptoms of burnout, a lot of challenges to our mental health. We may be, to your own story, like sort of relying on substances to keep us going or get us through or numb us to some of the stress that we're feeling. But even just acknowledging, right? Even that simple act of saying, I am experiencing a problem. I am experiencing something that is not healthy or that is not sustainable in the long run is very hard for us in this community. It's very hard for me, just speaking for myself. And I think it's very hard for a lot of us because we are, all of us, problem solvers, right? We come to the table to fix things. We are like, let us fix it for you. We will do the impossible. We will, get a production out the door in 3 minutes that usually would take 72 hours, right? And so for us to sort of pause and say, I don't feel great today, or this is like kind of like killing me slowly here, or I am really, really exhausted, underwhelmed, uninspired, sad, right? Those are not things that we sort of, I think, stop and reflect on and share willingly because we just want to be the helpful helpers that we are a lot of the time. So just getting people to respond to this survey took the better part of, I want to say, like 2 years.
Yeah, that's certainly not surprising. And I think what when you say that, it reminds me of the isolation that we can live in with these, because if I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling stressed out, that's a sign of weakness. I don't want people to know that. I'm like you said, I'm the problem solver. I'm paid to deal with tough things and to figure it out. And I grew up, I think it's kind of a human condition that we, a modern human condition that we are supposed to have it figured out. I think we're doing a lot to reverse that, but there's a strong background that, you're supposed to be, the authority and know how to fix things and do things, and asking for help and not sitting in isolation with that, putting your hand up and saying, I need help, or this is how I'm feeling. That's something that we're doing more now. Like, that's definitely different.
Yeah.
But that didn't come naturally to me. That wasn't something that I had to see others do that. And that's, I think, a big part about what you guys are doing. It's not the end solution necessarily. It's like the little steps, taking the survey, saying I got a problem, and then seeing it's not just me. It's other people too. And that makes me feel better knowing that it's not just me.
I think that's right. And we have these, we have data points that are constantly disturbing about attorneys, right? Like the ABA, other national law firm organizations, lawyer organizations do these surveys annually where we see an enormous, huge percentages of attorneys who admit to substance issues, huge percentages of attorneys who admit to feeling constantly exhausted, tired, overwhelmed, feel that their mental health is impaired by their work, right? So we kind of have those numbers generally for lawyers. And our goal was to sort of say, well, let's focus on this e-discovery space and what is unique about this e-discovery space. And why might it be unique, right? Why are we maybe specifically, what are some of the components of what we do that really lend themselves to this kind of level of burnout and level of really sort of, I think that feeling of just being overwhelmed, but not feeling like there is an outlet, right? Yeah. Like just sort of being like, okay, I'm constantly feeling overwhelmed and this is just how this is. And if I do this job, that's what it has to be. And I think our proposition is, well, does it? Yeah. Does it? Right? Does it have to be like this? Or might we potentially come up with some solutions or some strategies or some recommendations for things we could potentially do to change that? And not saying, right, everything, whenever we're asked to advise on cases or on client matters, every matter is bespoke, right? And every e-discovery challenge is a little bit bespoke and a little bit different every time. And we live in a place where data itself is evolving all the time, which means our case law is evolving all the time, which means we have to sort of constantly be moving, right, at the speed of data and at the speed of changes to what the rules are, right? Yeah. And so in that way, I think we are a little bit different, maybe from practitioners in a space where case law is very settled, right? Where there are things that are sort of like, oh, these are the rules, this is how it is. Maybe there are a few exceptions, but largely, this is sort of how we do things. We're constantly having to think of new ways to do things, constantly having to address new challenges. And it's sort of like, you don't have time to sleep, right? You don't have time to pause. You don't have time to reflect. You just have to go. And that is maybe a little bit different from some of the other areas of law.
Yeah, and I love in the white paper and some of what you guys are talking about at the UF conference. Both, what we should link those resources for everyone because I think they're fabulous, very in depth, resources for what we're working on here. But the concept that because we're technology centric and because technology fixes everything, it's almost like, oh, well, you guys can just figure it out. Like you were just saying, like we're held to a different standard. And as the technology, progresses and we have these great AI solutions, it's like, well, it's just a snap of a finger then, right? It can't be that hard. And I love the example you guys gave in the UF video where it was talking about the case with Apple, where there was all of a sudden you had a very large volume of data that had to be produced in a very short time frame. And the judge's opinion was, well, I'm sure, the corporation, if they really wanted to, could do that overnight. These assumptions that technology is just that easy fix, when in reality, we're talking about human hours that are put into this. And it's the human side. I think that's a big part of what you guys are doing is addressing the human side of this. Just because there is that technology, there still is real human implications. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a case that really resonates with me all the time because I think that judge is incredibly brilliant and writes, and speaks just unbelievably well. And I think that was the genuine consensus was like, there was a failure to produce sufficient documents here. And had you only snapped your fingers this could have happened in 24, 200,000 documents could have been produced in 24 hours. And I think maybe to our own, detriment sometimes, if someone came to me at 6 a.m. on a Saturday and was like, I need 200,000 documents produced in 24 hours, I think I would say, that's not possible. But let me figure out all the ways we could do it in like 72 hours, right? And I would call Jill Roran and get a bunch of contract attorneys, and I would talk to my brilliant vendors and figure out like how much technology could be leveraged to right? And we would all just like try to fix the problem, as opposed to saying like, maybe the problem is the request or the assumption in the first place, right? Yeah. And understanding that there are obviously very important things like discovery deadlines and things we all have to meet in accordance with our legal obligations and our clients' legal representations. But could we say, what if we said, no, that's not possible, right? And here's why it's not possible, right? It would mean, 200 people working 20 hours a day for the next 3 days. And that's really something we don't want to do. So why might we not want to do that, right? Why might we not want to do it? And I think the question, the solution potentially, or our proposition, which might be a little wild, because I think people hear sometimes about like something like this, right? The commitment to Mind Matters, the commitment to your organization, the commitment to something like Mind Budget Connection. Like, oh, this is very hokey. Like, this is very, these are people who just want to sit in a room and do yoga and talk about their problems and talk about their feelings. And we have real work to do. And it's like, well, what if though, right? What if some of the contractual changes that we're talking about implementing, or some of the pushback on the norms that we're suggesting you might want to consider, are actually like a really solid business proposition?
Yep.
Right? And my colleague Kevin Brady talks about this all the time. Like, what if the ROI here, right? If we're going to talk business and not talk like feelings, but like business strategy, what if the ROI on encouraging, mental health awareness, burnout awareness, contractual remedies that might help limit or prevent or cabin some of that burnout or exhaustion, what if those are actually like great business ideas you will get? What if conceptually you're saying it's not just like so people are happier and healthier and, get to go for a morning run, but it's like, no, I'm going to get better work product in a more efficient time frame from people who are that much more able to focus and dig in on critical strategic thinking and creative ideas, because I have made this commitment.
Yeah.
Whatever that commitment looks like, whether it's paying a little bit more hourly to a contract attorney, right? Whether it is limiting the number of hours in a day that you will accept an attorney billing. I just this past week was reviewing outside counsel guidelines for a client, and I was so struck. I don't know these people well. Otherwise, I think I might have picked up the phone and just called them to say, like, this is so awesome. But in their outside counsel guidelines, it says something along the lines of like, we think you should sleep more. And as opposed, I think many companies have outside counsel guidelines making it clear, like, we will not sort of pay for more than X number of consecutive hours billed, right? And that is there for budget purposes, obviously, right? But the way it was expressed in these particular outside counsel guidelines was just sort of like, we think it is really valuable that you get rest.
Yeah.
And that we think that when you are rested, you are going to be better lawyers for us. And so that is why we are doing this thing with sort of putting a cap on hours per day, because we actually think this is a good business idea and will be a better relationship between you, the law firm, and us, your client. And I loved that so much. I thought that was so and it's also sort of interesting that it was so revelatory, right? That it was so unusual to see something like that, and recognize that a big, corporation could think enough of that to sort of create outside counsel guidelines for that purpose.
No, I love it, and so many thoughts come up with that. So the real implication, like the real benefit of that is the less burnout, the less mistakes. And one of the things you guys talked about was if you got a 1,000,000-page document production and one document is misproduced, that's the issue. We are so critical with razor thin measures of success, right? And
Yes.
if we are operating from a sleep deprived, overworked, overstressed, too many projects, too few staff, all these things that are the symptoms, all these of bad decisions, bad contracts in place in the first place, then that's a downstream effect. And then it's this devastating, oh my gosh, you got 99% right, but you missed that 1%, and now the world's over. And it's all the ramifications. And so going back, as opposed to just addressing what happens when that happens, how do we take care of our people? What kind of health benefits can we put in place to help the end result and help them get over that? What do we do ahead of time? And so what forward thinking, and to call it out for what it is, not just we're going to pay X amount of hours. We're going to pay it because we care. And we actually we're invested in your health and the quality of work. And this goes to just the ROI that we get from these contracts. And, it's something similar to the group MCG with our focus on, addiction in the workplace. We cite the same exact thing. It's more valuable to address the things, to share and socialize and get help further, earlier on. Don't let it get to a point where it's a critical issue. Don't let it get to a point where it's not necessarily too late, but the damage has been done. How do we help people earlier on?
I think that's right. And I also, I believe we talked about this a little bit when we spoke at the University of Florida conference, but one of the other ways e-discovery is unique is our absence of metrics and our absence of rewards, right? When I was at Kirkland, there would always be this team was the litigators of the week in law.com, or the AmLaw runner-up litigators of the week for their work on this case where they won this thing and they got this thing or whatever. And oftentimes when we have a successful discovery process or a successful discovery advisory role on a matter, right? Or when you on the vendor side have supported a case really well in terms of really smooth collections, no review issues, production, great, right? The reward for all of that amazing work that we do is nothing. Nothing. There is no reward, because the reward is you didn't get sanctioned today, right? You didn't nobody wrote an article about all the discovery disputes in this case, right? And how you screwed it up, or how they got in trouble, or how that, privileged document production blew privilege on a number of other documents, right? When we do it well, we're really working behind the scenes a lot of the time. And so, the sort of traditional ways that we celebrate success in the legal industry, when people win or when there's a successful deal on the corporate side or whatever, our whole thing is we are backstage, a lot of the time. And we are as a former theater person, I'm constantly thinking in theater analogies, right? But we are the reason that you went to the show and the show was awesome, right? We made it all sort of possible for it to happen, but you're never going to see us. You're not probably going to know our name, right? And if you know my name, you might not know the 20 people that work with me day in and day out to make me look even vaguely competent half the time, right? So that whole thing, I think that whole sort of way that e-discovery functions and information governance advising functions is really, really different from some of the other areas of law. And that's another way in which I think, burnout sort of is uniquely highly possible in what we do, because we're just churning all the time to be in that support role, to be in those supportive structures. But we don't have a way to be like, and look what we got. Like, here's our trophy, right? Here's our plaque. Here's the article about how we saved discovery. And if anything, sometimes we're brought in when things have gone so far off the rails that they're like, how can you help us like kind of rein this back in a little bit? And so the metric for success is like, it's less bad than it was when we started 2 months ago, which is, also not something that's really easy to put in a marketing brochure. Like, we've made it less bad,
Yeah, man. And there's so many areas to go. I'm excited that y'all with Mind Budget Connection have started the process. We were talking about this before. It's about the journey. It's not the outcome. And the outcome may be kind of fuzzy because there could be different outcomes based on this journey. And like you just mentioning that, the lack of celebration for the work that's done, and, the congratulatory responses, silence that, there was no issues, right? Like, kind of like a collective sigh of relief versus like celebration and like, acknowledgement. Maybe that's a new area to look at. And I'm sure you guys are already, thinking the next steps ahead with that. I wish we could talk all day. We do try to keep it on the 30-minute format. So around this time in the show, we like to pivot to things that work for you, either personally or as it's related to Mind Budget, collectively, resources that you like to turn to or that have helped you. So anything you'd like to share or talk about?
Well, it will surprise no one. I am a big believer in therapy, whatever that looks like for you, whether it is one-on-one therapy, whether it is group therapy, whether it is just having someone in your life who you can talk and share with. I'm very blessed to have colleagues here who are committed to this journey for all of us. And I think that is there is no to try to talk about this more, I believe may help sort of start to claw back some of the shame that people feel about it. I think there should be no shame. I think there should be like a lot of pride in sort of saying like, yep, I talk about my problems with someone weekly, and that is helpful for me. And I am deeply imperfect. I will also say that we have been very lucky to partner with the EDRM folks. They were very, very much instrumental. They host our white paper, and I believe that it started during COVID, but they have wonderful, I think they're weekly meetings where people can come and talk to other people in the community about things that are challenging for them, whether it's emotionally, spiritually, and I think that is just an incredible gift that they give people who may just, even if you're not ready to talk and you just want to come in and listen, to feel some solace and some representation in others going through the same thing you're going through. They are a tremendous organization, and their commitment to mental health is very real.
That's fantastic. Oh, Michelle, well, thank you very much. And I'll just underscore, we'll do our best to link to those resources, and do visit the Mind Budget Connection website. You guys have a way of submitting questions, ideas, collaborating, and it's just to keep the conversation going, and that's what we're trying to do here, encourage these conversations.
Yeah, I would say, and it's not limited to lawyers, right? This community in e-discovery is made up of so many amazing different kinds of people. And if you see this or watch our video from Florida or read our white paper and have ideas or thoughts, we welcome them from everyone.
Awesome. Well, Michelle, thank you so much for this. We really appreciate it. Thank you to the ACEDS team as well. Maribel, Deja, and Mike for helping us put this together. Remember, you are not alone out there, and thanks for joining us on this journey, one step at a time. So thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank you for having me.
Have a nice day.